leaders actually in student success. I still got information here that can possibly help us, but we can learn a whole lot. And Dr. Friedrich may can speak to some of that. Just to give you a sample, for example, strategic goals. It says here, reaffirm the mission of colleges and its commitment to ensure success, access and success, and equity for students while affirming quality. Another one is like in partnership, strengthen partnerships with colleges and universities and pre-K-12 systems, particularly in the area of articulation, assessment, placement, and college readiness. So I do already know that we have partnerships with Clear Lake. We have partnerships with, or we're already communicating with some K-12s. Another one is engage employee workforce boards and community organizations to ensure the value of associate degrees and certificates and their relevance to local and regional labor markets. Dr. Friedrich, are we doing anything as far as that bullet there? You want me to repeat it?
Sure.
Okay. Engage employees, workforce boards, and community organizations to ensure the value of associate degrees and certificates and their relevance to local and regional labor markets.
Okay. Dr. Lochner might be better to speak to this, but I do know that we have advisory boards for all of our workforce programs that would address that.
Okay. And then another one was measuring and metrics, which is what you just got to talk about.
Yes.
Okay, so again, like I said, a lot of this stuff we already do. Let's see, board priorities. Ensure that the institution's budget clearly reflects priorities placed on improvement in student success and college completion. We're definitely making an attempt to do that. Let's see. Last but not least, let's see. Okay, establish regular opportunities for the board to engage in meaningful data-informed discussions about priorities and progress on the college's student success agenda. So, there's several other things here, but I just hit the highlights. This will be shared with the people that we needed to get to some of these actions to work. So I think it was actually a successful symposium, and I think we will pull something out of this that can help the college move forward.
Very much like to see that full report when we have an opportunity so we share that. I think you'll find that it probably tailor-made comes into the back of our annual plan each spring. I think you'll see that. All right, Dr. Durrance, looks like it's the president's report.
Okay, we'll start out, I'd like to ask Kathy Friedrich to review for us some of the data that we use to compare colleges in Mainland to other colleges that are in our peer group. iPad, you can have a large group that comparison group. We can also customize the group. So we have selected a group of colleges that are in the Gulf Coast Consortium. And Kathy,
So you have the full IPEDS report in your board packet. First page looks like this. And then I gave you a handout with some highlights that I'm going to go over with you today on. Okay. IPED stands for Integrated Post-Secondary Education Data System. Basically, this is the federal reporting system. Any institution that participates in financial aid programs, you are required to complete several surveys on an annual basis, sending data to the federal government. Okay. They collect data on things such as student enrollment, graduation rates, student charges, program completion, faculty and staff, and finances. The data is used in a variety of different ways at the federal and the state level. They use it for policy analysis and development. There's also something called the CollegeNet or something, I'm not going to remember the exact name of it, but the federal government has a website where parents and students can go and compare different institutions on those data. And then we can use it to compare ourselves to our peer institutions and do benchmark comparisons. Okay. The feedback report gives us a context for looking at the data that we send to them. And as Dr. Durrance mentioned, we can create our own custom peer group. So that's what we did. Next slide. We basically took all of the other institutions in the Gulf Coast region to create this custom report. We excluded Lone Star College, Houston Community College, and San Jac College because they're so much larger, the districts, than the other groups. We wanted it to kind of be comparable in terms of size. What this report does is it compares COM, or the College of the Mainland, where we are in a certain measure, to the median value for the peer groups. Okay? And the data that is presented here, this is data that was submitted during the 10-11 academic year. Some of the data is a year behind that. For example, in the fall we submitted completions data, and that was obviously a year old when we submitted it. Okay, so here are some of the select findings that I pulled from the report. Okay. Overall, if you look at our ethnicity, the percentage of minorities at COM is comparable to the other Gulf Coast institutions. However, we actually have a higher percentage of Black or African American students and a smaller percentage of Hispanic students. Okay? And a slightly lower percentage of white students. In terms of gender, we typically enroll a higher percentage of female students. Our total enrollment is about 2,000 less than the median value for other schools in the Gulf Coast area. This is an annual figure. It's an unduplicated head count across an entire school year. Okay? Our total full-time equivalent, a student full-time equivalent is they look at how many hours credit hours we have, and how many people would that make up if each student was taking 12 hours. So if everybody was enrolled full-time, what would we have? And basically, we're about 800 below the other community colleges, okay? Pretty much regardless of student status, full-time, part-time, first-time, undergraduate, seeking degrees, not seeking degrees, our enrollment is basically lower than that of the median of the other community colleges in the area, okay? Our student-to-faculty ratio is also slightly lower. At COM, it's 16-to-1. The median for the other Gulf Coast colleges is 18-to-1. Cost of attendance. The tuition and fees at COM is lower, $1,007 compared to $1,414. Okay? This is based on in-district tuition. However, the average net price of attendance is higher, $8,040 compared to $4,410. The average net price, what they do is they look at full-time students, first-time students enrolled full-time, okay, who receive some type of financial aid. And they look at the average amount of financial aid that is received, and they subtract that from the overall cost of attendance. The overall cost of attendance would include your tuition and fees, your books, housing expenses, those kinds of things, okay? Our number in terms of the average price is higher because we have fewer full-time, first-time students who are receiving aid, and those who are receiving aid are receiving a smaller amount on average compared to the other colleges. I know that's a big mouthful of information. Did that make sense? Okay. Okay, so we do have fewer students that are receiving any grant aid, as I said. However, we do pretty much have about the same percentage of students receiving Pell. I think I've already mentioned that. The only thing I didn't mention is that we have fewer students who are receiving loans. That should not be a surprise because we've just recently started doing student loans again. Okay, in terms of awards, we awarded fewer degrees and certificates than the median of the other community colleges in the area. Our graduation rate is about 6% for our first-time full-time students for that year. That is about 3 times less than what it is for the median value of the other community colleges. Our transfer rate is also lower, 18% compared to 30%. However, if you just look at the graduation rate for entering students, it's about the same. Our retention of our part-time students is much lower, 43% compared to 54%. Retention of our full-time students is about the same. So that's just kind of a brief overview of some of the statistics that are in that report that look at the students. There's also some information in there about finances and staff and faculty that you can look at on your own. Are there any questions about any of these measures or anything else in the report? Yes, sir.
You know, figures can mean anything. I have a question about one that you may not be able to answer. It's the transfer rate, which I'm sure they're leaving here and going to another to a university. But down below it, it says the graduation rates for entering students are the same, so I'm assuming that's graduation rates for a 2-year degree or certificate or whatever. It appears to me that that could mean that they're getting all the education they need to get a good job. That's why they're not going on to a university. So what do these figures really mean, I guess?
Well, you kind of have to look at it all together, okay? So our entering students, they are graduating at a similar rate, okay? But we're not retaining students as much, and they're not transferring out to other institutions, and the ones who enter full-time are not graduating as much. So it's a mixed bag, and in some areas we're doing a good job, but in other areas we're not.
It's hard to decipher the reasons for these. They're just figures.
Yes, it is hard to
There's
decipher
a lot of
them.
things that could impact.
And I have to go back and read these. The last 2 pages of the report that's in your board packet has all the definitions, and I have to go back and read them 3 and 4 times sometimes myself. So, the transfer out, let's see if it talks about that in here. Yeah, I'll have to look at this a little bit more in depth. The transfer out rate are those who have known to transfer during the same time period. So they didn't graduate from us, they went somewhere else. Yes, ma'am.
Not related to the numbers that you gave, I'm directing it to Dr. Jordan and then Dr. Martin. How do we collect, or do we collect student loan repayments?
That would be Dr. our CFO question. Collection of loans, student loans, what's our process with student
Just reinstated, well, really, it's financial aid, it's not my area, but I'm aware that we are back in the federal funded or subsidized loan business again. So you're saying if a student drops out, they've gotten a loan, they default, what are you saying?
No, I think he has a loan.
Yes.
Where is that? How does that student repay the loans to the institution?
No, it's not. No. It is like when they get out, there's a deferment period usually, and so if it's a subsidized loan, you go through your academic studies, and then 6 months after you graduate, you begin making payments. If it's unsubsidized, you begin making principal and interest. And then you have, you can pay interest on unsubsidized all along the way because the interest will accrue to the principal. But you pay the lender actually other funds.
Because I remember once upon a time, I think that was making reasons that I was business because they were paying it to the college. And we weren't collecting it.
I think there was a high default rate by the student in repayment of their loans period.
I can speak to that if you want. Because I work with financial aid. We got out of it because of the default rate, is exactly right. What the federal government has mandated and what we do now is there's a lot more education that is given to the students when they get a loan. Before they can get the loan, they have to go through a program to understand what their responsibilities are. And then as they leave, they also have to do an exit interview. Again, reiterating what their responsibilities are. The idea being hopefully that they will, the default rate will be less than.
I just didn't remember.
Yes.
And you know, there has been, this